Buckle up, skeptics, because what you're about to see might just change your mind. We're diving deep into a collection of mind-blowing videos that will challenge everything you thought you knew about extraterrestrial life, from inexplicable aerial phenomena to chilling encounters with otherworldly beings. These videos will leave you questioning the boundaries of our reality. Prepare to be amazed, terrified, and ultimately convinced.
The Roswell incident is arguably the most famous UFO crash in history, although the government would claim otherwise. Basically, on June 24th of 1947, while searching for a crashed military aircraft, pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted 9 UFOs flying over the Cascade Mountains of Washington state in the US. The objects were flying in formation at a height of about 10,000 feet and a speed of approximately 1,900 kilometers per hour, which was not possible at the time, for humans that is. Kenneth described the way the objects moved as jerky, like rocks skipping over the water, flashing forward at strange intervals. When the media got a hold of the story, they coined the phrase flying saucer, and the UFO craze took off at hyperspeed. Especially when on July 7th, a local rancher named Mac Brazel called the sheriff to let him know that one of those objects had somehow ended up on his farm, and this came to be known as the Roswell incident.
It was back in July of 1947 that something strange happened near Roswell, New Mexico. Something had crashed into the ground, into Brazel's farm. There were metal pieces, rubber strips, and a strange tin foil-like material. The nearby Roswell Army airfield was alerted. The military came out and collected the debris. At first they issued a press release saying they had recovered an unknown flying disc. This really got people talking, but just a day later the Army changed their story, saying it was actually just a weather balloon. Now, while some of the public took this at face value, it caused some controversy, especially in the years to come. People started to believe that the military was covering up something much bigger, possibly an alien spacecraft crash. Over the years, people started to come forward claiming to have seen the wreckage, and not only were there strange markings on the material described by some as hieroglyphics, but the material was incredibly strong and seemed to almost be impossible to burn. Oh, and of course, people who'd been called to the site to recover the material claimed to have seen bodies that were clearly not human. Over the years, many people have questioned the official explanation for this incident. Even former military personnel and locals said they saw strange things at the crash site, like debris that didn't look like it came from any known aircraft, and even small bodies that didn't seem human. In 1994, the US Air Force released a report saying the debris was from a top-secret project called Project Mogul, a project that used high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. They said the unusual materials found were just parts of these balloons and their sensors, but this explanation didn't satisfy everyone. In 1997, on the 50th anniversary of the incident, the Air Force released another report to address the claims about these alien bodies. They said these were actually just crash test dummies used in military experiments, not extraterrestrial beings. But again, a lot of people were and still are highly skeptical of this. The Roswell incident happened less than 2 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan in 1945. Those bombs were created through a secret project that lasted 3 years and had 3 main sites, including one in New Mexico. So if the government could keep the atomic bomb a secret for so long, why wouldn't they be able and willing to hide information about a crashed UFO landing? Plus, little mannequins? I think most people would look at that and be able to tell the difference between an alien and a crash test dummy.
So this foreign object that landed on Mac Brazel's farm actually did so a few days prior to him calling into the sheriff's department. To be honest, he hadn't thought much of it until he started reading about Kenneth Arnold flying saucers and UFOs in the papers. Once he learned about the possible presence of technologically advanced ships with no known origin that likely came from outer space, he began to wonder if that was in fact what had landed on his farm just a few nights ago. And so he gathered up some of the debris and took them down to the local police station. In response, the sheriff immediately contacted the nearby army base, and soon intelligence officer Jesse Marcel had arrived on the scene and instructed Brazel to take him to the crash site so that the two could collect more debris. So let's talk about Jesse Marcel, the first military officer to step foot on the scene of the crash, because apparently Jesse had a lot to say, according to his son Jesse Jr., who went on to tell his father's story after his death in 19 1986. According to Jesse Jr., in 1947, when he was just 10 years old, his father woke him up in the middle of the night, excited after having visited the crash site. Jesse Jr. sat up as Jesse Sr. handed him some of the debris he had collected earlier that day on Brazil's farm, and he told Jesse Jr. to get a good look because the debris were something that he would never see again. They were not of this earth, and the pair simply could not make sense of them. Out of all of the debris his father had brought home, Jesse Jr. said that the one that fascinated him most was a small beam with purple-hued hieroglyphics. I suppose it's not difficult to see why the pair didn't believe the government when they released a report saying that what had been found on the Brazil's farm was nothing more than a discarded weather balloon. But of course, you don't mess with the government. And so for years, both Jesse Jr. and his father kept quiet about what they had seen. That is until in the late 1970s, a man named Stanton Friedman showed up asking questions. Stanton T. Friedman, a nuclear physicist turned ufologist, tracked down Jesse Sr. after being tipped off that a retired military man might know something about the Roswell incident, something that had been kept from the public for the past 31 years. And it turns out he did. Jesse Sr. told Freeman that the weather balloon story had in fact been a cover-up, and that the original wreckage had been replaced with a weather balloon shortly after military personnel first arrived on the scene. Not only that, but Jesse claimed that despite what their superiors had wanted them to believe, it was incredibly clear to everyone working on the site that the object had in fact been an extraterrestrial spaceship with outstanding craftsmanship and incredibly advanced out-of-this-world technologies. Although, for so long we have looked for life in space within the parameters of what constitutes life to us: DNA, RNA, and nucleic acids. But there is a theory, the different kind of life theory, that states this is the reason why we haven't been successful in our search, because life outside of Earth does not need any of the things that we do to survive. Their cells get instructions in biochemical ways completely different from our own. Going off of this, one can assume that planets previously deemed as uninhabitable and therefore removed from the search area for extraterrestrial life might actually be the exact place where alien life forms could be found. The statement that only 1 in a million planets have the right combination of chemicals, temperature, water, days, and nights to support planetary life as we know it completely discounts planetary life as we don't. Extraterrestrials who operate on an incredibly different fundamental and chemical level than our own might be lurking right in our cosmic backyard, we just haven't been searching for them properly. The faraway theory is a pretty straightforward one. The reason we have yet to find aliens is because they are too far away and moving further away by the minute. Basically, the theory states that due to the expansion of the universe, galaxies are constantly moving further and further away from one another, and the further they become, the faster they move, which means it's highly likely that we miss that sweet spot of alien interaction due to the fact that our society was just too underdeveloped when aliens inhabited galaxies that were close enough to communicate with. Either that, or humanity didn't miss it, but we did, because it already happened some 6,000 years ago, which would explain the pyramids and many ancient civilizations' fascinations with the stars. Either way, we're SOL for distance. But maybe we haven't found aliens yet because we haven't been communicating properly. Here's the thing. For the better half of a century, humanity has been leaking radio signals into space at such a rate that any intelligent life form within 100 light years of Earth would surely be able to pick up the signal. But as tech improves, these radio leaks reduce, and one day they might disappear altogether, and the Earth might fall back into radio silence. Perhaps the same is the case for other planets, and the reason we haven't been able to hear their radio signals and they haven't heard any of ours is simply because in the cosmic scope of time, the radio signals just don't last that long and our timing is off. In 1974, however, humanity did make a direct attempt at communicating with aliens by beaming an interstellar message out towards a globular cluster 25,000 light years away. The only problem is that for anyone to receive the message, they would have to be situated directly in the path of the beam. Not only that, but the message took less than 3 minutes to transit, meaning even if an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization was perfectly situated in the path, they would have had less than 3 minutes to detect the signal. While it seems unlikely, it is possible that in 1977 we got lucky enough to detect a beam coming from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization down to Earth. A momentary burst of energy known as the wow signal swept across the planet, but we have not been able to figure out its origin or been able to detect it since we heard it the first time. In 2012, however, we did send back a response, but we have yet to hear back from whoever sent the wow signal. Perhaps, though, the reason we have yet to interact with intelligent life forms is because the universe has filtered them out, and one day it will filter us out too. Basically, what I'm saying is that humanity and all other life forms have an expiry date that is pre-wired into our experience and that prohibits us from ever reaching the point of extraterrestrial communications and other planetary colonizations. Why? I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it's to protect the universe somehow. I mean, let's think about it. Let's say right now is the perfect time for life to exist on Earth, and one day, long after we're gone, it will be the perfect time for life to exist on, say, Venus. If we had already found a way to migrate to Venus and subsequently developed it to our liking and then polluted it beyond repair, the life that was supposed to exist there after we had moved on to the next planet would have zero chance at survival. So maybe the expiration date encoded into each and every living being across the universe is to allow each and every being to have its moment in time to exist. Branching off of that theory, the Great Filter Theory, we have the self-destruction theory, which is similar but just a bit different because instead of the universe giving us an expiration date pre-coded into our existence, self-destruction theory states that life on every planet is destined to kill itself in order to protect the planet itself rather than the universe as a whole. Like I said, the theories are really similar, but one is a universal law and one is planetary preservation. Self-destruction theory comes from the Medea hypothesis, which is based off Medea from Greek mythology, who killed her offspring. Basically, our planet is Medea and we are the offspring. The very thing that gave us life is destined to kill us as we take away its own life force. An example of this is the Ice Ages, which those who follow the self-destruction theory would blame on an excess of plants, which absorbed an excess amount of CO2, which led to extreme global cooling, greatly damaging the integrity of life on Earth. Now we've come in. We've killed off a bunch of plants, we've warmed the Earth up, but we warmed it up too much, and we've killed off a bunch of other living things. And this, once again, has greatly damaged the integrity of life on Earth, meaning that at some point in time before we are able to achieve an intelligence level that allows us to communicate and commute. Unfortunately, Jesse did claim that he never got to witness the alleged aliens inside of the craft being pulled out, but still, he's ex-military, he was there. It's a pretty compelling case if you ask me.
There are also witnesses aside from Brazos claiming to have seen some strange things. So many of these witnesses stayed silent for years, but eventually began speaking out to close friends or family about what they'd seen, still fearing repercussions from the government. There was another crash site about 40 miles from Brazos Ranch where more wreckage and alien bodies were said to be being recovered. A firefighter who went to this site claimed that he saw a large disc in the ground and several small non-human bodies nearby. He said that military officials told him to keep quiet about what he saw. Sergeant Melvin Brown also shared his experience. He said he rode in a truck with the bodies from the crash site to Roswell Field and then stood guard at the hangar where they were first kept. He was instructed not to look under a tarp, but he got curious and he peeked. He claimed he saw 2 alien bodies. The government has always denied his claims, but several people who were there or knew people who were there have said they saw wreckage and bodies arrive at Wright Field. Retired General Arthur Exon stated that a top secret committee was set up to oversee the investigation of this and other classified UFO incidents. After the Roswell crash, the debris was secretly flown from Fort Worth, Texas to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. At Wright Field, Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Exon, who later became the base commander, recalled that some of the material was very thin, but incredibly strong. And it wasn't just metal that arrived at Wright Field either. At the second crash site a few miles from the first, they discovered a smaller, more intact craft and 4 bodies lying nearby. These bodies did not look look human. Again, according to witnesses, the bodies were described as being in fairly good condition despite having been exposed for 6 days. Some parts of the bodies have been chewed on by animals. Descriptions from those who saw the bodies are pretty consistent. They were said to be 4 to 5 feet tall, with big heads, large eyes, and small mouths. Basically your classic idea of an alien. They had thin bodies with long arms and 4 fingers. An army nurse who worked on the initial autopsy described how fragile the skulls and bones were too. The bodies were quickly placed in large, sealed wooden crates, loaded onto a B-29 bomber and flown to Fort Worth before being sent to Wright Field.
Now, the general public weren't the only ones concerned with the Roswell crash. In fact, one of the highest members of government was too, the president, which at the time was Harry S. Truman. After the incident took place, Truman became increasingly interested and concerned with UFOs, so much so that in 1948 he called a meeting with his military aide, Colonel Robert Laundrie, in the Oval Office to discuss UFO reports and what they might mean for the security of the country. Laundrie told Truman that, quote, all manner of objects and things were being seen in the sky by people as of late, which only led the president to worry more about the possibility of new, never-before-seen threats to the American people. And so Truman ordered a quarterly oral report from both Laundrie and the Air Force to be presented to him at the White House to discuss whether or not the UFO sightings would present any kind of immediate danger. Although neither the military or the Air Force were ever able or willing to provide Truman with any answers, the UFO sightings kept coming and officials became more and more confused. To this day, it's unclear what information the government has gathered on UFOs, but what we do know is that if they do in fact have concrete evidence supporting the existence of alien life forms, they sure as heck aren't sharing it with us. Yet, fingers crossed.
The Roswell incident was the catalyst for pretty much every modern UFO conspiracy today. Before Roswell, the idea of aliens was just that, really, an idea. But when stories about this mysterious crash hit the papers, it really changed the public's view of the possibility of alien life forever. Suddenly, what people had read about in science fiction and fantasy novels or watched on the big screen was something a lot more concrete. Project Blue Book formed a few years after the Roswell incident, a genuine Air Force program dedicated to investigating UFOs, at least in the early days. Area 51, the mysterious Men in Black, Majestic 12, all of these things started being whispered about in the years following the Roswell incident.
To these aliens, something is bound to come in and kill off humanity. Do you see what I'm saying? Another theory, however, states that Earth is actually the birthplace of all life, all aliens. It's the incubation theory that, to put it quite simply, states that Earth is an incubation ground for all life in our universe, and that once a civilization reaches a point of high enough intelligence, they leave to colonize other planets. If this is true, it makes sense why aliens who have gone through the same process wouldn't want to interfere with our own. This is our chance to prove to the rest of the universe that we are not the runts of the litter, but that we have the capabilities to evolve into a species that can branch out into the universe on our own. The same way people who make documentaries about nature aren't supposed to step in when a lion tries to eat a gazelle, there is an unspoken rule that prohibits aliens from interfering with our development until we have reached that final stage. And then of course there is zoo theory, which is similar to incubation theory in that aliens have decided not to interfere with our existence, but different in that zoo theory does not follow the notion that all life in the universe began and evolved on Earth. What's neat, or perhaps terrifying, about zoo theory is that it covers the idea that while we have not yet been able to observe extraterrestrial life forms ourselves, they have certainly been able to observe us, and they've been doing it for centuries. If this really is the case, I wonder if Earth is the entire zoo, or just one of many exhibits in a giant cosmic roadside attraction called the Milky Way. It's anyone's guess, really. Now, much like how in order to communicate with aliens via signal beam, we would have to send our communications to the exact right spot at the exact right time, the reason why we haven't seen aliens could just be a timing issue. It's entirely possible that aliens existed long before our current time. Maybe they were around for the beginning of humanity, and maybe they even visited Earth early on in order to aid with some architectural projects like the pyramids and Stonehenge, but now they're gone. Extinct, dunzo, we missed them, and they're not coming back. I feel like this theory makes a fair bit of sense when you consider the references made in ancient texts to godly humanoid figures that are now, for some reason, nowhere to be found. Perhaps extraterrestrial life forms knew they were dying out and stopped on Earth to keep their existence from becoming nothing but stardust. On the other hand, of course, perhaps we aren't late, but we're early. According to Abraham Leob of Harvard and Raphael Batista and David Salone of the University of Oxford, the chances of life on other planets is actually set to grow much higher in the distant future. I mean, life on Earth developed 30 million years after the Big Bang, and it's still in the early stages. So who's to say that in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 million years, the galaxy won't be teeming with various intelligent life forms spread out across the cosmos? I mean, it makes sense, but so do the rest of these theories. Anyways, the likelihood of us being alone in this universe is slim, but the likelihood that we are lone intelligent beings in this universe, because the rest of life is still in single-celled stage 1, is much more probable. The dark forest hypothesis is another possible reason for our lack of alien communication. Basically, the hypothesis states that the reason we have not yet crossed paths with any other life form is due to a drive towards self-preservation and a fear of being destroyed by another hostile, undetected civilization. I mean, to be fair, if I were part of a peaceful, albeit guarded, civilization making my way through the cosmos, and I stumbled upon humanity, I would 100% be absolutely terrified. We're scary, there's no denying it. Don't even try. And what if there is another civilization out there even scarier than us? I don't want us to be looking in the wrong cosmic corner one day and accidentally run into our doom. Like, you wouldn't go looking into the corners of a dark forest to figure out what's lurking there that could possibly kill you, so why are we doing it in our universe? Furthermore, it's likely that out of this sphere, extraterrestrial species are not only not looking for us, but also actively working against being found. But then again, on the other hand, maybe aliens don't exist and we really are alone, floating through the vastness of space, inching closer and closer to our impending doom that will one day come in the form of a massive quasar swallowing our galaxy. Project Serpo, a secret government exchange program with extraterrestrial beings.
Did astronauts visit a distant planet and interact with alien beings? And are they still in cahoots with the government to this day?
A top secret exchange program between the United States government and planet Serpo, located in the Zeta Reticuli star system, aka the planet of the short grays. The project was allegedly created under the administration of President John F. Kennedy after the US government saved the life of an alien, EVA-1, who crash-landed on Earth back in 1947. Entirely grateful and forever indebted to humanity, the alien began working with the US government and teaching them about his home planet, Serpo. When EVA-1 died, he left behind communications technology, which the government then used to eventually get into contact with other Serpo natives. That is when the government made arrangements to send 12 specially trained astronauts to planet Serpo so that they may learn about life outside of our atmosphere. In order to reach Serpo, the 12 astronauts had to travel through a wormhole, after which the majority of them got sick and one unfortunately died of an aneurysm. But of course they kept going and eventually they reached the alien planet. For a decade they studied life on Serpo before returning home and assuming entirely new identities in order to protect the security of the mission. Fair enough, I suppose.
So what are the origins of this Project Serpo tale? Well, like with most conspiracies in the modern age, it started gaining popularity online and took off from there. It all started in 2005 when a series of anonymous emails began circulating among UFO researchers and enthusiasts. These emails, which were allegedly from a retired US government official who remained anonymous, laid out this insane story about an extraterrestrial exchange program. We'll talk more about this anonymous individual later. The Project Serpo story started making the rounds way faster than these types of stories would have back in the day. It was 2005, the internet was still relatively new in the grand scheme of things anyway, and the UFO community was just hungry for new sensational stories. And this one, it's pretty much the definition of sensational.
Remember that alien that I mentioned, EVA-1? 51 that crash landed to Earth in 1947? Yeah, well, that was actually the Roswell incident of 1947, and also the first time the US government supposedly made contact with aliens. As many of you are probably already aware, in 1947 an unidentified object crash landed on some farmland in Roswell, New Mexico. When Area 51 was alerted of the incident, they rushed to the scene, collected the object, and released a statement saying that what had come spiraling down to Earth a few nights prior was nothing more than a weather balloon. But then they sent the object out to another base for testing, and another, and another. Why? Well, because it wasn't actually a weather balloon. It was an alien spacecraft containing 6 aliens, 5 of which had died in the crash, and one of which came to be known as Extraterrestrial Biological Entity Number 1, or EBA-1. EBA-1 was taken to the Air Force facility in Los Alamos, where he stayed until his death in 1952. During this time, he learned to communicate with the military and told them some pretty interesting things.
Now, if the US government is really working with these alien beings, where might they be carrying out their activities? Area 51? Some hidden base in Antarctica? Well, some say they could be operating from an even more top secret place. Dulce Base. Dulce Base supposedly sits deep beneath the Colorado-New Mexico border, close to Dulce, New Mexico. Dulce Base is said to be a secret facility where humans and aliens are working together, exchanging ideas and doing all sorts of experiments, multiple levels deep underground with high-tech labs. The rumors are that different alien species, from the Greys, from planet Serpo possibly, to the reptilians, are working hand in hand with the US government. As to what they're trying to accomplish, probably something really fun and good that we don't really need to bother worrying about. Stories about this place really started coming about from a man named Paul Benowitz, who claimed to have discovered an underground base near Dulce full of gray aliens and humans. His claims caught a lot of attention, but Benowitz's mental health eventually declined, and he ended up in a mental hospital, passed away in 2003. There's always been this rumor that he was part of a big, widespread misinformation campaign.
As I said, during EBA-1's time on Earth, he informed the US government of quite a few things. One being that Serpo natives, Ebans as they are referred to by humans, had actually been visiting Earth for the last 2,000 years with no issue, but unfortunately, this time new Earth radar technology that they don't have on Serpo caused the ship to go haywire and crash, killing the majority of the crew. In 1949, a similar thing happened. 6 Ebans crash landed, but this time unfortunately none of them made it. When the ship was examined, the military found a communications device, which they worked on with EBA-1 to repair. They got it working and sent out multiple distress signals, but it wasn't until after EBA-1's death in 1952 that they finally got a reply. Communications began between the US military and the Ebans. It took a while, but eventually they were able to understand one another. After learning about the 12 deceased Ebans stranded on Earth, the Ebans asked if they could come to Earth and retrieve the bodies. Of course, the military wanted something in return, so they came up with the exchange program. The military wanted tech, but the Ebans said, no, you're not ready for our tech. And so they proposed something else. In exchange for the bodies of their deceased, 12 astronauts could spend a decade on planet Serpo. We're listed today with probably the most obvious evidence of extraterrestrial beings having landed on Earth and sharing with us their infinite wisdom. The pyramids, obviously. I mean, have you seen those things? Not only are they impressive size-wise, they're also mathematical marvels. I mean, how the hell could ancient civilizations have created a pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned with true north within 3/60ths of a degree, making it one of the most accurately aligned structures on the planet that encodes its own latitude and longitude, with a base perimeter equal to 1/2 of its latitude. Not only that, but the pyramids of Giza's plateau are positioned to represent and align with the constellation Orion's belt. There are many other coincidences, like the pyramids being in line with Stonehenge and the connection between the information found in both the Egyptian and Mayan pyramids, along with the fact that all around the world they all look generally the same, despite being across oceans from one another. I'm just saying, to build all of the ancient pyramids now would be incredibly difficult, and without electricity, motor vehicles, and communication with fellow builders to confirm building shapes, sizes, and purpose, as well as what is written within them, I feel like it's impossible that we could achieve now what they did back then, probably because back then they had some help from some pretty smart extraterrestrial beings. I'm talking about aliens.
So back in 2017, a number of strange mummies were uncovered in a cave in Peru. Now, these are not those small doll-like mummies you're probably thinking of. These are a different set of mummies. Apparently, there have been some pretty interesting tests done on these as well. The mummies only have 3 fingers and have elongated skulls. A bunch of the scientific community said this was likely a hoax, that the mummies were likely tampered with, but it turns out that may not be the case. They did some imaging tests on one of the mummies named Maria, and the tests revealed that her bones are similar to human bones but have some distinct differences. First of all, there were no signs that her elongated skull had been artificially altered. Maria didn't have any hair or ears, she only had ear canal openings. Each finger has 4 bones, unlike the 3 bones in a human finger, making her hands about 8 inches longer than usual. Her feet have longer toes, each with 4 bones instead of 3. The heel bone of her foot is shaped differently, and radiocarbon dating places the age between 240 AD and 383 AD, meaning she lived around the time of the ancient Nazca civilization. Who knows if this is genuinely a real set of mummies or just a hoax? We'll probably find out within the next, I don't know, few months, weeks, days or so, but interesting for now.
Next up, we have some pretty convincing evidence. Ancient descriptions of spaceships carved within the walls of the Temple of Osiris at Abydos. I mean, the hieroglyphics are clear as day. While some people claim that the spaceship depiction is the result of erosion on the tablet where it had once been inscribed, I'm just not buying it. I mean, I understand there is a piece missing from the corner, but the spaceship image remains untouched and in my opinion unaffected. I mean, look at the other hieroglyphics on this slab. Although this is one of the only places in Egypt where spacecrafts are depicted in hieroglyphics, even this single depiction, combined with everything I mentioned in my first point, along with the fact that ancient Egyptians are often depicted looking up into the heavens and worshipping the stars, I'd say it's a pretty good chance that the inscription was more than just erosion or even abstract art. It's a spaceship, guys. Come on, just look at it.
Next up, we have some recently declassified UAP footage. The video was captured back in 2018, but was just released to the public this month, which at the time of filming this video is June of 2024. The strange object had been spotted flying over a US Joint Operations Base in Iraq, and the Pentagon has officially classified it as an unknown aerial phenomenon, or a UAP. The object was spotted and tracked by a US military infrared radar. It moved through the sensitive military installation before making a controlled descent into a body of water, where it stayed for about 17 minutes, and it re-emerged before taking off at an incredible speed. Something very interesting that a number of viewers have pointed out is how rapidly the object changes color. Remember, the video was picked up through an infrared camera, so the changing of color indicates a change in temperature. And apparently this strange object was rapidly changing temperature, which not only made it hard for the camera to track it, but it was also changing temperature faster than any known object, according to Dr. Matthew Sadagas, a physics professor at the University of Albany. So yeah, one of the most interesting pieces of UAP footage to come out in the last year or so.
Next up, we have Jonah and the Whale, a biblical story about a man who is cast from his ship and then swallowed whole by a great fish. For 3 days, Jonah lives inside the whale, and for 3 days he prays to God until eventually, voila, the whale spits him out. In some versions of the story, Jonah also notices that the ribs of the whale are gleaming bronze. One small fact that might just change everything. It's not uncommon for extraterrestrial believers to attribute instances in the Bible to alien activity, and so it makes sense why many UFO enthusiasts believe that Jonah was not swallowed by a whale, but instead picked up by an alien submarine, a USO if you will, unidentified submersible object with a bronze interior, of course. Fancy.
In May of 2023, a 911 call was made by a man saying he and his family saw something, quote, not human in their backyard. Last year in Las Vegas, a resident named Angel Kenmore called 911 after seeing what he described as a tall, skinny alien creature with greenish color about 8 to 10 feet tall, hiding behind a forklift in his backyard. He said, I looked at it in the eyes and my body just froze like having sleep paralysis. He described the creature as having a, quote, weird looking face, big feet, and big shiny eyes and a big mouth. And added, I can hear its loud, deep breathing, and its stomach kept moving. He would just stare at me, and seconds later, I could move again. Scott Roeder from Evidence Room, Animation and Exhibits analyzed video taken at the scene using motion tracking software. He said, quote, all of our results came back as authentic. There's no editing. That is an original video. Roeder scrutinized the footage repeatedly, and using motion tracking software, he showed how a shadow's movement seemed to match the movement of a body attached to a head, saying, quote, we don't believe it's a floating head. We believe it's attached to a body, and the motion of that head from right to left is consistent with the motion that we see between the slats of the fence. This one's kind of interesting. It is hard to make out what is going on in this video. I see the fence, I see everyone in the backyard. There is a bit of a shadowy thing above the fence, but it's hard to spot. Anyway, interesting story, and the police do say it doesn't seem like the family's doing a hoax.
Furthermore, an Eben would stay on Earth to assist the military. In 1964, the Ebens landed on Earth once again to retrieve the bodies, and Project Serpo, aka Project Crystal Night, as it has also been called, commenced.
The star system where these aliens are supposedly from has been at the center of some of the most famous alien abduction stories in history, including the Barney and Betty Hill abduction. Were these beings from Serpo, Ebens, or Greys, as they're typically called, responsible for abductions like this? The Barney and Betty Hill case is pretty interesting. In September of 1961, this American couple was driving through rural New Hampshire at night when they noticed strange lights in the sky that seemed to be tracking their car's movements. Barney decided to stop the car to get out and have a look, and what he allegedly saw were humanoid figures peering out from a hovering craft. The Hills peeled off as fast as they could, but they later realized they'd lost a pretty hefty chunk of time that they just didn't remember. But as the days passed, they started to remember things. They ended up reporting being taken aboard a UFO where they were subjected to medical examinations by beings described as small, with gray skin, oversized eyes, and tiny little anime mouths, that's the exact way they described it back then. It's a 60s term, anime mouths. Their account was one of the earliest descriptions of the now iconic image of your classic gray alien.
Of course, a regular mission to space is no walk in the park, but a mission to a faraway planet located in a star system entirely separate from our own, that's tough. And apparently so was the training process. It took an entire year of survival, escape, evasions, weapons, and psychological training for the 12 astronauts to become fully prepared for their mission. The crew consisted of scientists, linguists, pilots, 2 doctors, and a security officer. Over the course of a year, along with the standard training, one by one, each member of the crew was buried in a 6 by 5 foot box and kept there for 5 days as part of a training intensive. There was no light, no communication. Just a small air hole that allowed the astronauts to receive food and water and not suffocate to death. It was tough, but they all passed, and the pilots even went on to learn how to operate alien spacecrafts. When it came time to take off, the 12 astronauts, along with 40 tons of gear, which included 10 motorcycles and 3 jeeps, were loaded into the spacecraft using anti-gravity technology, and one Eben came along to assist in their journey. When the ship was all boarded, each astronaut went to their own individual pod and settled in for the long journey ahead.
Alright, before we get to, what they saw on that journey, let's have a little bit of fun here and talk about something that comes up more than you'd probably think when Project Serpo or just interactions between aliens and humans is discussed. Hybrids. Yeah, aliens creating human-alien hybrids, either through experimentation or, God forbid, actually getting it on. This kind of thing always feels like it's going down the same rabbit hole that creepy online fan fiction does, or it's like, I'm gonna write about my fantasy of Alf impregnating Willie Tanner. I don't know. I'm not trying to shame, live your lives, but the concept of humans and aliens breeding with each other always feels inherently silly to me. With that said though, this does often play into the Project Serpo conspiracy. Those astronauts were apparently on this planet for a while. Who knows who they met. One thing could have led to another. Plus, in all these reported UFO abduction cases, who knows what kind of nasty experiments those Greys could have been doing.
When the crew arrived at Serpo, the first thing they noticed was that it was barren, bright, and hot. Really hot. About 107 degrees Fahrenheit or 41 degrees Celsius. Quickly, they realized why. Planet Serpo had 2 suns, which are shown here in a photograph taken by one of the astronauts. Allegedly. One of the suns was orbited by Serpo, and the other was off in the distance. Because of this, the planet never got dark, and the days were 40 hours long, meaning that their decade-long mission was actually going to take 13 human years. In total, there are about 650,000 Ebens living on the planet in small, separate village communities and houses made of some kind of concrete rubber substance. It was a primitive life, but at the same time, the Ebens were equipped with electricity and incredibly advanced technology. Families generally consisted of a male and female Eben, and each family was allowed to have a maximum of 2 children, which were hidden away until they reached the age of maturity. During their time on Serpo, the astronauts gathered as much information about the Ebens as they could. And if you guys remember, I do believe I mentioned that one of the astronauts died on transit. Apparently the Ebens used that astronaut to clone and create hybrids of, like James mentioned. And it was then that the remaining astronauts realized that they weren't as peaceful as they once thought them to be. When it came time to return home, for some reason, 2 of the astronauts actually decided to stay, and then 2 more astronauts died on the way back to Earth. The surviving astronauts were given a large sum of money and an entirely new identity. That's great and all, but many of them were suffering from radiation poisoning due to the 2 suns and died soon after their return to Earth.
One of the most avid supporters of the Project Serpo conspiracy is a man named Richard Doty, who we can't really talk about Serpo without talking about this guy. See, Richard Doty has made some pretty outlandish claims, so outlandish that there's a whole other conspiracy that spawned around him and other government officials like him. Supposedly, Doty was the man behind those anonymous emails I talked about earlier. Richard Doty is a retired special agent who used to work for AFOSI, the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. But a lot of people think he wasn't actually investigating UFOs, but that he was part of a team spreading misinformation intentionally, basically muddying the waters and leaking supposedly secret info about the government's exchange program with alien beings in order to confuse the public, making it hard for us to tell what's real or not. Of course, the purpose behind the misinformation is, of course, to distract everyone from the actual nefarious things the government is up to. I mean, who doesn't get excited about aliens, right? I'm sure we'd all rather believe that the worst thing the government is doing is working with extraterrestrials instead of them doing some shady stuff at our own expense. Could there be some genuine truth about the planet Serpo thing? I mean, sure, maybe, but you know, just something to keep in mind with stuff.
Next up, we have Pakal the Great's tomb, located inside of a highly advanced pyramid in Mexico, halfway across the world from the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, and intricately adorned with inscriptions that appear to depict a highly advanced space rocket. When Pakal the Great passed, he was placed inside a coffin, which was placed inside of a tomb, which was built inside of a temple. Also inside the temple, as I previously mentioned, inscriptions, many inscriptions, but one in particular that I want to focus on, this one. Yes, the one that appears to show Pakal the Great himself sitting in the driver's seat of some kind of highly advanced rocket ship with dials and gears and perhaps even weaponry, suggesting not only alien presence but also discourse among the extraterrestrial races as well. Which also begs the question, did Pakal really die, or is his tomb a monument to his bravery for joining some kind of space war? I mean, I know they found bones in his supposed coffin, but like, those could be anyone's.
Retired Army Colonel Carl Nell just came out with a very interesting statement, saying that non-human intelligence not only exists, but has been interacting with humanity for a long time. He shared this during a live chat at the Salt Eye Connections conference, which focuses on innovative ideas in finance and geopolitics. Now, at one time, Nell was the head of the Pentagon's UFO/UAP task force and says that the government has been withholding top secret information on aliens. According to Nell, the term non-human intelligence is is used by officials to describe potential alien life. The Pentagon has of course denied these allegations. When asked why the government would keep all this stuff secret, Nell basically explained that the government just doesn't have much of a plan in place to deal with them right now, and that they don't want to cause any panic, which definitely makes some sense. But hey, what do you guys think of this one though? Interesting? Just some kind of distraction? Who knows? Leave your thoughts down in the comments.
You want to know what makes me quite confident that my subtle belief in aliens having already touched down on Earth might just be 100% correct? Harvard scientists backing my claims. Yep, that's right. Here's some new evidence for you. Aliens have visited Earth because Harvard said so. Yep, Harvard, one of the top universities in the world, has academics running around holding press conferences and saying that not only is it likely that aliens exist and have been here before, but that they are probably still here, living either among us, below us, or even on the moon. The claim comes from a hypothesis pertaining to a study called the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, a case for scientific openness to a concealed earthly explanation for unidentified anomalous phenomenon. That's a mouthful. And the hypothesis itself provided four possible explanations for anomalous activity. 1 is an extraterrestrial explanation, i.e. aliens. 3, an unconventional terrestrial explanation, i.e. unconventional explanations that still don't involve aliens. And 4, the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, the result of either aliens or a subspecies of humans that evolved separately from us to be far more advanced, living among us on Earth. It sounds pretty out there, but it's also Harvard University academics who wrote the paper. So who am I to judge? And who are you to judge me? It's Harvard.
And finally, we have some information that is going to be revealed next month at a conference by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. They're set to make what's being described as a major reveal about a case involving unidentified aerial phenomena, materials from Russia. The event will take place on Saturday, July 13th, so hopefully we'll be able to share some interesting news around then. All we know right now is that apparently mysterious materials were delivered to the home of a Russian UFO investigator. Tests, which were later confirmed by MUFON's US lab, showed that the materials are of unknown origin. Materials can usually be identified based on their components from the periodic table, but that was not the case here. Apparently 90% of the sample couldn't be identified. MUFON Media Relations Director Ron James stated that, quote, "The evidence that supports this story and others that we will share at the symposium could make this the biggest UFO-related news event of the year. We have physical materials and more evidence of non-human technology." So, some to
off in our number 10 spot, we have exoplanets. One of the first things spoken about in the 12-minute long anonymous video is that around 25 years ago, we didn't know that planets existed outside of our solar system. While that seems hard to believe, that is actually basically true, keeping in mind that this video was released in 2017. The first exoplanets, which are what planets outside of our solar system are called, were discovered in 1992, which is super recently. The video then goes on to explain that today we have found over 3,400 exoplanets that orbit other suns. This may seem redundant or unimportant, but this is a really important part of our search for alien life. With the vastness of space, there are so many places that need to be searched, so we have to find some place to start, and these planets are the perfect place. It is entirely possible that alien life may thrive off of entirely different things than life as we know it. The things we need to survive might be detrimental to alien life, but how are we supposed to know that when we don't know any aliens? This is why we started our search by looking for places with conditions similar to Earth, which we now call habitable planets. Part of a habitable planet's requirements is that they are orbiting a star, but that they aren't too close or too far from it like we are with the sun. So what the video is trying to get across is that while 25 years ago we didn't know any, we now know of thousands of planets that might be holding some kind of alien life. While we haven't found the proof yet, we at least have a pretty stellar starting point. In our number 9 spot today, we have Dr. Brian O'Leary. One thing Anonymous mentioned in the video was an apparent quote from Dr. Brian O'Leary, who's a former NASA astronaut and Princeton physics professor. The video stated that he said that there is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been monitoring us for a very long time, and that their appearance is bizarre from any type of traditional materialistic Western Western point of view, and that these visitors use the technologies of consciousness, they use droids, they use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems, which seems to be a common denominator of the UFO phenomenon. I obviously have no idea how I could possibly substantiate these claims, but they certainly are interesting regardless of what you personally believe. This could of course just be nonsense in order to stir up the masses, but it could also be someone who's finally telling us the truth, but we're all just too skeptical at this point to believe it. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of what Dr. O'Leary said. Do you think it's a hunk of baloney, or do you think that he just might be telling the truth? In our number 8 spot today we have the FBI documents. Around the halfway mark, the person in the anonymous video begins to discuss some sort of FBI documents that are apparently unclassified, just sitting there on the website. The video claims that the documents suggest that we've not only been visited by aliens from space, but also beings from other dimensions. The video does explain that the document didn't originate from within the FBI, but rather from a university department head, but that the FBI treated the document with the utmost importance, which is certainly interesting. It's also very important to note, however, that this document was sent in 1947. I'm not sure if that makes the claims more or less likely or credible, but the timing of it definitely seems important, at least to me. While this is one of those things that you have to draw your own conclusions from, in the video it is mentioned that while we are arguing whether or not supposed UFO or alien sightings have really taken place here on Earth or in space, there are real instances of extraterrestrial beings visiting us, but we're just too focused on the debate to open our eyes and see for ourselves. In our number 7 spot today we have esoteric matters. After the discussion of the FBI documents, there is a claim that these beings that have apparently been visiting us are coming not from a planet as we think of it, but rather some sort of etheric planet that interpenetrates with our own, but that we are unable to perceive. Apparently, if you're a student of esoteric matters, these concepts will make a lot more sense to you, or so this anonymous video claims. Apparently, these alien beings are able to make a conscious decision to enter our plane, and in that same respect, they're also to make a decision to disappear from our view. Apparently, they're visiting us as they are thinking about settling here on our plane, and that they are coming here peacefully. During these visits, they are also said to have technology that would destroy any sort of attack made on them, so it is advised that if they do make themselves visible to us, we do not attack or make them feel threatened. I'm not so sure about this one, but at the end of the day, I am certainly no student of esoteric matters, so maybe it's just something that my brain cannot comprehend with the knowledge I currently have. In our number 6 spot today we have this UFO footage. This UFO footage is coming from another anonymous video which claims that real UFO footage is always censored, and that this video has been previously censored, but they were here to expose the truth. It is unclear where this UFO video was taken, and at the end of the day, I'm no expert in debunking these things, so it's tough to say whether or not it's real, but let's all just take a look and you can judge for yourselves. I know that wasn't the most exciting video, but what do we think aliens are going to be doing if they really are visiting us? What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this video is really showing some sort of UFO? And if you do you think it's aliens or just some sort of secret project that we aren't privy to?
What are these figurines supposed to be? Would you ever think that they were meant to depict humans? Certainly don't look human to me, but it's not just because they're very old sculptures. I mean, they look intentionally not human. They look reptilian. The noses, or lack thereof, the eyes, if these were meant to resemble people, they did a bad job. Either that or these were really horrifying looking folks. But if they're not meant to be humans, then what exactly are they? The statues are often referred to as the Ubaid lizard men. The 7,000-year-old artifacts were uncovered in Iraq in the 20th century. There are theories as to what these things could be, but no definitive evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have any written records of the time, so determining the ideas behind people's artistic expression in prehistoric Mesopotamia, it's not really the easiest, but I'm pretty fascinated by the idea that there may have been some reptilian aliens visiting Earth around this time that people were depicting here.
Definitive proof of life beyond our planet found inside of a meteorite that landed in Sri Lanka back in December of 2013. Yeah. When pieces of the space rock were gathered and examined back in 2013, a shocking discovery was made. The debris of the meteor contained fossils, algae fossils, of clear extraterrestrial origin, according to lead scientist Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. Because algae is technically alive, if Professor Chandra's science is correct, the discovery marks the first documented discovery of life that originated from outside of our atmosphere. While the legitimacy of the work has been debated amongst Chandra's peers, who claim that the algae may have been embedded into the meteorite during its time on Earth, the professor is standing firm in his discovery and has claimed that among the algae fossils he discovered were other organisms that are not yet identified and do not match anything discovered on Earth thus far, which of course is great news for those of us who are really hoping that Chandra's discovery of extraterrestrial life is legitimate and that the doubters are just mad they weren't able to make the discovery for themselves.
Are these sculptures of planes? They kind of look like stylized planes to me, but that would be impossible because these are thousands of years old. They're artifacts from what is known as the Kumbaya period, a pre-Columbian culture which was around from about 500 BC to 680. They were known for their skill in metalwork. I mean, obviously these things are lovely, but yeah, they really do look remarkably like modern airplanes. They have wings that don't really look like bird wings to me, and a lot of them even have what look like tail fins. So how and why were these created? Did these people somehow have knowledge of what the future of air travel was going to look like? Were they encountering beings with highly advanced technology? The official explanation is that these are depictions of animals, insects, birds, that sort of thing, and yeah, there's a very good chance that's all these are, but I can't deny how eerily accurate they look to modern flying machines. And here's another really interesting thing. In 1994, a group of German engineers actually built scale models of the Kumbaya artifacts to see if they could fly, and guess what? They did, with an added propulsion system of course, but the designs worked. They were aerodynamically perfect and could fly.
The Williams Enigmalith. What is it? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely from out of this world. It looks a bit like a rock with a plug, but it's not a rock with a plug, and it's far from being just an ordinary rock. The object was found in 1998 by a hiker named John J. Williams. He noticed a strange piece of metal coming out of the dirt on his hiking trail, and so he dug it up. When he did, he revealed a rock with 3 metal prongs sticking out of it. It looked somehow man-made and appeared to have some kind of electrical component to it. Why? Well, I'm not sure, but Williams, who is an electrical engineer, claims that the electronic component embedded in the stone was not glued or welded into the granite rock surrounding it, meaning that while it appears to have possibly been man-made, because electrical components don't just naturally exist inside of rocks, especially ones dated to be around 100,000 years old, it must be something else, perhaps from somewhere else, perhaps somewhere out of this world. While Williams is open to having others research the strange rock, he does have a few conditions. He must be present for whatever discovery is made, and the rock must remain unharmed. Even with these parameters, you would think that by using modern day tools and technology, we would have been able to get an answer as to what exactly the rock is by now, and where the electrical component is coming from and how it was embedded. But no such discovery has been made, leaving the leading theory to be that its origins are likely not of this earth, and that it likely holds the answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet.
No one is exactly sure what this thing is. It's been dubbed the Wedge of Aiud and was found in Romania in 1973. Workers came across it while digging during a construction project. It was found buried along with 2 large mastodon bones. The wedge is around 5 pounds and it's made of aluminum. Now this turns out to be pretty strange because aluminum wasn't widely used until the 19th century, but this thing is estimated to be much older, at least 250,000 years old. It's a very odd looking object. It looks like a modern art piece or something, but what exactly is it? Well, again, nobody really knows for sure, but one of the funnest theories, of course, is that it's extraterrestrial in origin, maybe having come off an ancient alien spacecraft or something.
The Sumerian Triumph Tapestry, which appears to not only depict the succession of various rulers to the throne, but also the presence of UFOs hovering above the Sumerian people is next on our list today. The tapestry was created in the capital of West Flanders province in the Flemish region of Belgium around 1538, and since then it has been the subject.
In our number 5 spot today we have Perseverance. A point that was made in the video is something that we are actually now watching happen in real time, and that is the mission to Mars for the Perseverance rover that is currently there digging around in the soil. The video stated that Mars may hold signs of an ancient environment that may have been favorable to microbial life. Well, that is exactly true, and the reason the rover is there at all. The Perseverance rover launched from Earth on July 30th, 2020 and made an incredible and successful landing on Mars on February 18th, 2021. While the rover has provided us with some incredible high-definition photos of the red planet, which truly are incredible to look at, its main objective is to dig around and search for ancient signs of life, collecting rock and soil samples for a possible return to Earth for further research. While Mars' thin atmosphere is unable to shield the planet from the high amounts of radiation coming from space now, it is thought that the atmosphere did once act as a better shield, and that the environment of Mars may have once been a great host for life, which is exactly why this mission is so important. While when the anonymous video was first released, we were still a ways away from the Perseverance mission taking place, it's really cool to see how it has come to fruition, and it's exciting to see the new photos and discoveries that are made each day. In our number 4 spot today we have UFO footage part 2. We have to include just one more video of what is claimed to be proof of aliens visiting us on Earth before we get back into the more sciencey top 3 points. This is another video that was uploaded by a member of Anonymous, and it comes from 2017. The video features a dark sky, but it shows what looks like some sort of aircraft with a few flashing lights, and it seems like it is able to basically just hover there. Not long after the video starts, another mysterious UFO seemingly joins the first one, and the two are just seen floating there. What do you guys think these could be? I obviously don't know what an alien aircraft would look like, so it's tough to say if this is a realistic example or not. All I know is that if this isn't someone playing a trick and they really saw this in the sky, I have no other possible explanations of what it could be. In our number 3 spot today we have TRAPPIST-1. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. One of the things Anonymous mentioned in the video was a nearby star called TRAPPIST-1. The video didn't go into too much detail about this, but I'm here to do that now so we can all know what they were talking about. While TRAPPIST-1 is a star, the revelation that the video spoke about was that this star has an entire solar system of Earth-like planets. This discovery first came in 2017, and upon further research, in 2018 it was revealed that some of the planets just may harbor even more water than Earth does. Some of the planets are a little too close to the star, so the water is more atmospheric water vapor. The ones in the middle have liquid water, like us, and the furthest ones have ice. TRAPPIST-1 is now the most thoroughly known planetary system apart from ours, which is kinda cool. While the Anonymous video made it seem like there was a full-blown advanced alien civilization living in this solar system, there still might be potential for some form of microbial life that we just haven't quite found yet. And that is very cool. In our number 2 spot today we have Enceladus. If you had heard of Enceladus before the Anonymous video, there's a good chance you knew it as basically an icy snowball floating around in space, or perhaps you simply knew it as a small moon of Saturn with a diameter of 502 kilometers, but as it turns out, this small moon might hold some pretty amazing potential. It was discovered that this moon has hydrothermal processes going on underneath its crust. To us non-scientists that means next to nothing, but what if I said that means that it just might have all of the requirements for life, and that it is becoming a greater possibility that we might find microbial life there. Basically, this moon has an icy shell for a surface and then a rocky interior, but between those two layers is a warm ocean, and this ocean is where scientists think the life is most likely to be. This discovery came almost accidentally when the Cassini orbiter arrived to Saturn in 2005, and it found water plumes shooting out of the cracks in the surface of the moon, which made scientists realize realize that it just may be geologically active. Through more research and by flying the orbiter through the water, by the time 2015 rolled around, scientists knew that it was holding all of the keys to life. While this little moon was never the original focus of research, it quickly took over with its incredibly exciting potential. In our number 1 spot today we have Europa. We've got another moon to talk about that was mentioned in the video that also just might be holding the keys to us finding alien life, but this time we're taking it over to Jupiter and its icy moon Europa. Europa has been a point of interest for a while after NASA's Galileo Jupiter probe in the 1990s revealed an unusually warm spot in Europa's cold surface. In March of 2014, the Hubble telescope detected what scientists thought might be a plume of water vapor, but the caution turned to cautious excitement and optimism in February of 2016 when the telescope caught another, much larger plume in the same spot. This has led to the creation of the Europa Clipper mission. While this mission doesn't yet have a set date, it will see an orbiter flying to Europa to fly through these plumes in an attempt to see what they are made out of, similar to the one we just talked about, to see if it really is holding the key to life, or maybe even life itself. One of the scientists on the Clipper mission, Robert Pappalardo, explained that if there is life on Europa, it almost certainly was completely independent from the origin of life on Earth. That would mean the origin of life must be pretty easy throughout the galaxy, and
Subject of many conspiracy theories, which makes sense considering the 2 alien spaceship-looking objects depicted in the top left corner of the piece. Now, if you know anything about the Sumerian people or the Anunnaki, you are likely well aware that even without the presence of the Triumph Tapestry, the Sumerians are a pretty good argument for the legitimacy of aliens having had a pretty prominent presence on Earth in the past. Adding the tapestry into the mix is really just the cherry on top of the extraterrestrial cake, because it confirms how the Anunnaki, the ultra-intelligent alien species that ordered the creation of the pyramids, arrived on Earth in the first place. If you don't know anything about the Sumerians, ancient Sumeria, and the Anunnaki, but would like to, I do have a video on them titled Ancient Sumerian Mysteries That May Never Be Explained that you can watch after this.
Next we have the Coso artifact, known as one of the world's out-of-place artifacts. It was discovered in 1961 near Olancha, California. While out looking for geodes, these rock collectors found a strange rock that seemed out of place, and when they cut it open, they were surprised to find it actually had a metal core inside. The outer layer of the rock was encrusted with a hard substance, while the inner metal core was a cylindrical object that looked almost like a spark plug. This was not what anyone had been expecting to find, because the rock seemed to be millions of years old, far older than the age of modern machinery. So it sparked, see what I did there? It sparked a lot of curiosity. Some researchers think this is just a naturally occurring geode that somehow formed around a modern spark plug, but what if it's not the case? What if it's a piece of ancient technology left by an advanced civilization? Or even more interesting, an object that some extraterrestrial beings left behind a long time ago.
I'm sure by now we've all heard the theories that the pyramids were built by aliens, which is a fair assumption considering the fact that historians have been consistently unable to come up with an explanation as to how the construction of the pyramids would have been possible in ancient times. But what about other massive artifacts like Stonehenge, or perhaps the massive stone head that was found in the middle of the Guatemalan jungle in the 1930s? The statue dates back to before the Spanish Revolution, so prior to the Mayan and Aztec empires falling to the Spanish armies, which is strange considering 1, there is little to no way the Mayans living in the area could have sculpted the stone head and placed it in the area, and 2, if somehow they did, why doesn't it look like them? The statue's features do not mimic those of the ancient Mayans or Aztecs. Because of this, it is believed that the features once displayed on the head, which have since worn down due to revolutionary troops using the historic artifact as target practice, were actually the features of an ancient alien civilization that was far more intelligent than humanity, and that likely had a hand in the construction of the Mayan and perhaps even the Aztec empires as well.
This next one is actually 100% known to be from space. Back in June of last year, Harvard professor and theoretical astrophysicist Avi Loeb led an excavation to Papua New Guinea to uncover the remnants of a meteor that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and what they found were small spherical space rocks from deep in space, and there's still a question as to whether the object they came from was naturally occurring or not. What they do know is that the small spheres are made up of elements we don't have here on Earth. Loeb wrote, quote, "This is a historic discovery because it represents the first time that humans put their hands on materials from a large object that arrived to Earth from outside the solar system."
Finally, we have an incredibly mysterious extraterrestrial object discovered by the Betts family in 1974. That year, a mysterious fire had broken out on the family's property that destroyed 88 acres of woodland. When the Bettses went out to explore the area and search for the cause of the mysterious fire, they stumbled across a metal sphere with a diameter of just 8 inches and a weight of almost 20 pounds. At first, the family thought that the object might have belonged to the Soviet Union or perhaps NASA. They thought about leaving it where they found it, but curiosity got the better of them, and so they decided to take it home. About 2 weeks later, the family's son was playing guitar while sitting next to the strange spherical object when all of a sudden it began to emit a strange resonating sound that caused the family dog to act up. A while later, the family discovered that when they pushed the sphere across the floor away from themselves, it would change direction and return to the person who had pushed it. Not only that, but the object avoided being damaged at all costs, rolling up slanted tables to keep itself from crashing on the floor, and eventually it began emitting pulsing sounds seemingly out of nowhere. The strange behavior was witnessed by scientists as well as representatives from the military, so you don't just have to take the Betts family's word for it. At first, the Betts family refused to let the ball out of their possession, but after doors started slamming shut and music began randomly playing in their home, they handed it over to the authorities, who were shocked to discover that the metal ball was just that, a metal ball, or so it appeared. While there is no solid explanation as to why the sphere displayed such strange properties and caused so many strange things to happen, I think we can all agree that the most likely reason is because it came from outer space with a purpose that has yet to reveal itself to mankind. There you have it, folks.
We hope to catch you in the next video.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about the creepiest glitches that Alexa has made, and yes, we're talking about the Alexa in your home. Viewer discretion advised. Don't forget to turn off your own Alexa. Click the video now and we'll see you guys in that next video.